This week is Parshas Re'eh. I wanted to talk a little bit of an interesting mitzvah about Leitzis Goydadu. The pasuk starts off like this: Bonu matem l'Hashem Elokeichem Leitzis Goydadu v'Leitzisimu korcha b'neinechem lomeis. Second pasuk is Ki am kodesh ata l'Hashem Elokeicha b'chol bachar Hashem liyos le'la'am segula mikol ha'amim asher al pnei adama. To translate the word simply, you are the sons of Hashem Elokeichem. You should not. Titgodeddo would mean to cut yourself, and you shouldn't make a bald spot between your eyes because of a mace. And the pasuk continues, the second pasuk, because you're a holy nation, L'Hashem Elokecha, and Hashem chose you to be the Am Segula from all the other nations that are on the face of the earth. So obviously there's a connection between what the pasuk is saying with the fact of Leitzis Goydadu to the fact that Bonu matem and L'Hashem Elokeichem and Ki am kodesh ata L'Hashem Elokecha b'chol bachar, and the continuation of the second pasuk. So Rashi says the following: Titgudeddo v'seret b'bsarchem. You shouldn't cut yourself or scratch yourself in your flesh. Meis kederach she'amorim oisim, like the Amorim do. L'fisha atam banav shel makom, because you're the sons of Hashem. Va'atam ruyim liyos noem. You're supposed to be beautiful. V'lo gedudum u'kurachim, not cut up and bald. Beinei nechem. What's beinei nechem? Etzel hapadachas, by the forehead. B'makom acher roim liyikrachu karcha b'roisham. In another place it says that you shouldn't make a bald spot on your head. Lasis kol reish kaveinu einayim. Just like there's a space between the eyes that doesn't have hair, so too you shouldn't make any spot on your head without any hair from the tsar of the mace. Ki am kadosh ata zok Rashi kedushas atzmacha me'abesecha va'oidu b'chol bachar Hashem. Besides for the fact that we ourselves are the chosen nation, but really it's all schus avis, that our kedusha comes from our parents, from our forefathers, and Hashem chose us as well also. So there's a couple of things over here just to unpack what Rashi says and to go through just a bunch of different ideas and bechlal the klalius ha'inyan of what Leitzis Goydadu is about. So Ramban says that the pasuk says also by Teres Kehanim that it was specific for the Kehanim. And now it sounds like that the Torah is giving this mitzvah for everybody. Over here it sounds like everybody is part of the mitzvah that was given to the Kehanim, that they shouldn't create a bald spot on their head. So therefore, you have to guard yourself from doing this as well, even though there are those amongst Klal Yisrael that are not Kehanim. The Rabbi Seinu understand that this pasuk is talking about both of them, and our pasuk is talking about a mace. It's possible to understand that the first mitzvah of L'Yikruchu Karcha B'Roisham is talking about specifically to the Kehanim. Maybe a person who made a bald spot on his head or cut himself purposely from tsar, for whatever it is, he's not Roy Lavoida. He came to the Avoida, and the Avoida would be Mecholol. It's interesting because there's a story that a Kohen came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and he didn't have a beard. So Reb Chaim told him he's Pasal Avoida. So they were trying to figure out what Reb Chaim meant by this, but then they told us to over here because he has a shtikl karcha, not mamish b'raishai, but on his face. He's missing a big chelik of what he is supposed to look like. So he had Reb Chaim, who tried to convince everybody to grow a beard, because that's a tzur of a yid, and obviously it's a great madrega for those that could do it. So that's what they understood from what Reb Chaim said. But over here we're saying also that the mitzvah is not just for the Kehanim, but it's for all of Klal Yisrael also. And we need both of them, one specific for the Kehanim and one specific for the rest of Klal Yisrael. Now the Ramban is going to go speak about what Rashi says. Because you are the children of Hashem, so it's proper for you to look beautiful, and you shouldn't be cut up and bald. It's not correct. What does this have to do specifically with a mace? The pasuk says, "What's this got to do with a mace?" If the idea is that a yid should always look beautiful and always look presentable, and he shouldn't look like he's going through tsar, it's like the lashon of the Chavis Halavavis brings that it's evle belibov, it's halos al panav, that a Yid always has to present himself in a proper way. That have a makabelas kol adam b'sefer panim yafis. It doesn't mean that even if you're having a bad day, that you shouldn't be the one that's walking around b'sefer panim yafis. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter used to say that a person's face is rishus harabim, and it's something that everyone has to see and everyone's going to see, and it's very easy to pick up on somebody who's not, feeling great and not in the greatest spirits. And it's interesting because psychologically speaking, if a person convinces himself that he's happy by putting on even a fake smile, so to speak, it could lead him to actually feeling happier, to lift his spirits, to feel better about himself. He's asking a kasha on Rashi that technically it should be that what we're talking about here is even not to do with, according to Rashi, it should be even not to do with the mace, and the pasuk is specific about a mace. Rabbeinu Avram Omar, the Ibn Ezra says, he says, the Ibn Ezra says a very powerful idea. He says like this, he says that after you know that you're the children of Hashem, and He loves you more than a father can love his son, don't scratch yourself or cut yourself in any way on anything that would happen. He says everything that the father does for a child is for the good, even if the child doesn't understand it. We have to have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that whatever that Kol Madav Rahman L'Tav, whether we understand it, whether we don't understand it, but we know He's unser Tata, and we know that He's taking care of us. And many times the child doesn't understand, why the parents are doing kach v'kach, why the kid needs to do kach v'kach. It's beyond the kid's understanding. So to over here, there are many things that we don't understand. Throughout history, even in our time, it's not a historical thing, but it always was that we never understood, and it's not something that we're going to understand. But we have to be samech on Him, and we are samech on Him because He is our Father. Ki am kadosh ata, because we are a holy nation. Ve'einche keshar kol hagoyim, and the reason why these things happen to us is because we are a holy nation, and we have who to be samech on, because we are the chosen nation, and we're not like the rest of the nations of the world. Al ken leisasek k'maseyim, so we have to differentiate ourselves with our actions and our behaviors, that we shouldn't follow kechukes hagoyim, as we're going to see later from the Sefer HaChinuch. Ulefi daiti, zok the Ramban himself, the Ramban's understanding of what this Isra of Leitzis Titgodedו is, Kitam Am Kodesh Havtacha Bekim Hanafashis L'Fonav Yisbarach. That the understanding of the Am Kodesh is a Havtacha, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps all the Nefashis by him. Yoimar Achri Sh'ata Am Kodesh Uzgulas Hashem. Now that we know that we are a holy nation and we are Hashem's treasure, V'lo Yisa Elikim Nefesh V'choyshev Machashav is a Vilti Yidach V'menu Nidach. There's no such thing as a Nefesh that ever gets lost, and Hashem holds all the neshamas close to Him. Ein roi lachem lehiskoidad likarech al nefesh ba'afilu yomas benoyar. It's not proper to cut yourself or to make a bald spot on your head when a person dies, even if a person dies young, and it's a tremendous tragedy. Unfortunately, it happens. We still have to be careful to recognize this, that we're still in Am Kadosh. And in Am Kadosh, we have to protect ourselves and prevent ourselves from doing things to lower ourselves to something that is in the Chukes HaGoyim. Here's something interesting that the Ramban adds to this, is that the Torah does not answer us from crying on a mace. Ki hateva yis'era livkos bepirid ha'oyhavim v'nidudam af b'chayim. It's a fascinating concept. He says that the nature of a person is that he'll be mis'era to cry when his loved ones leave him, and even if they move away when they're still alive. And it's very common that when two friends part ways, they cry when you're not going to see him for a long time, or maybe you're not going to see him ever again. You're going to cry. So the concept is the same thing when a person leaves this world, he's going to cry, and that's just a teva, because there's a separation be'etzem, and there's a separation of you're missing the person. It's not because the person's necessarily lost; it's because you miss him. The concept of grief is understood when a person is grieving al hameis. It's the concept is because of the love that he doesn't have anymore from the other person. He's trying to show his love; he just doesn't have anywhere to put it. So that's the understanding of a big chelik of what Avelus is all about. But the Torah does not ask. The Torah asks us from hurting ourselves or from doing things that would make us look funny, at least according to Rashi, by making a bald spot. But the point is really that there's a certain teva that a person has when he's in anguish from the tsar of the period from somebody, but the Torah doesn't answer the crying because that doesn't take away from the levush, from the tzuras haguf of a person. It's interesting though because there are places in the Gemara where we find that because of excessive crying, alames or for other things, the guf did change. The Gemara Kedushin that mi ben risi einecha snicker that you're ben almona, ben grusha, and we know from the Gemara Moed Katan, mi kan samach le Rabbi Seinu, as Gemara Moed Katan, but osum les abel al nefesh yosim midai. There's a concept of being misabel on a mace for too much, and in a way that's not proper. It was interesting because people would say, he got caught up in his emotions. Yeah. It's true. People get caught up in their emotions. The idea is like this. The idea is that the Torah wants us, for the most part, that the seichel should be shaylet on our emotions. Now, it could happen sometimes that the Torah wants us to get into our emotions as well. And it's the proper thing to do, to be misabel on a mace and to feel sad when a person leaves this world. We're supposed to. There are chiyuvei avelus that we all have to do when a person leaves this world. But the concept is that there's a measure to it, because, like the Gemara says in Brachas by Shluach HaKan, that you're not going to be more of a Rachaman than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands it. We don't understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not because we know so much. It's because we don't understand, and it's not possible for us to understand the Darkei Hashem. Okay, and the Das Kanim, adds to this, and he says that if a person's father dies of basar v'dam, he shouldn't cut himself. Shaharei einchem yisayim b'kach. You're not yisayim like this. Ki yesh lechem av shehu chai v'kayam yisbarach v'yiz'ala. Because you have a father who's chai v'kayam, and yisbarach v'yiz'ala shmai. Avala akum. But the goyim nishmas av yesh le'liz goydei she'en le'oid av. The goyim don't have the concept of harachamon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they don't have a avarachamon that Klal Yisrael has. Ki im eitzev avonoi she'ein ba moil. They have a father that's made out of stones and wood. K'dichsiv oimrim le'etz abiato le'evan ati ladetanu. Like the pasuk says that the goyim say to the trees and to the wood that you're my father, and to the stones you give birth to us. Obviously, that's a nonsensical thing, but the nakuda is that they don't have the concept of the avarachamon that they could be saimech on. And it's more than that, they don't have what to be samech on. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose us so that we can have this. This is the greatest bracha that Klal Yisrael has, that whatever tzara that we have, whatever we're going through, we have yesh al mi lismach, and ein lanu al mi liyishayin elo al avinu shebashamayim. And that's the greatest concept over here also. So if a person gets too caught up in the tsar that he's going through, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to think about him then a little bit also. Now, it's not our job to go around telling other people, b'shas tzaram, that, you're doing too much or whatever. I mean, if a Rav knows somebody and he sees somebody, a Talmid Chacham sees somebody, and he's a Talmid Chacham that people are going to listen to, and he could explain it, so then it's good, because ein adam nitzvas b'shas tzara. You have to understand that what a person's going through is tremendously difficult for him, and we have to always be sensitive. We always have to be sensitive, and the Torah is derechel darchei noyam, all the ways of the Torah are pleasant. And there's a word from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that if it's not darchei noyam, it's not from the Torah. There's not one part of the Torah that's not derechel darchei noyam. So when it comes to Hilchos Avelos also, when there's a demand that maybe a person should try to control his tzar a little bit, there's an understanding to that also. Every person has a different matzav, every person has a different story, and that's that. I just want to also just go through the Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvah Tov Samach Zayin, 467. Shalayla his guided gufeinu kumei sheyasu evdei avodah zara. We shouldn't cut our goof like the evdei avodah zara. Duval zenemer leisis guidedu. V'nich balav ze b'mila acheres, and this lav is doubled over elsewhere. Shenema v'seret l'nefesh le'sitnu v'v'sarchem. You shouldn't scratch yourself. Ub'msechti Yavamis Daf Yud Gimel. Amr zecherem l'bracha. The Gemara Yavamis says, leisis guidedu mebay l'gufei. We need one pasuk to tell us the Isra of leisis guidedu. Di Am Rachman leisasu chabura. V'sham nemar oid leisis guidedu al meis. You shouldn't make a cut on a mace. Amr zecherem l'bracha. And the Makkos and the Afchafal of the Gemara says, Shesrita ugdida davar echadu. It doesn't matter how you cut it. Sham nemar shahaseret alameis ben biyad ben bekli chayiv. It doesn't matter how a person cuts himself, whether he scratches himself with his hand or he cuts himself with a utensil, he's chayiv al avodah zara. And if he's doing it by an avodah zara, then bekli he's chayiv. If he does it with utensil, he's chayiv. Biyad is going to be patur. Shekain hoyim and hogam lizgoded lefnei avodah zara bekli. It was the minig of avodah zara to cut themselves with a kli, so that's the ikr way of doing this iser. So that's why the ikr chiyuv is bekli. Inyan shekosov, like the pasuk says in Malachim, by Eliyahu Hanavi, by Har Carmel, by his goydedu k'mishpatim b'charavos b'ramochim, that they cut themselves as was their mishpat, as was their halacha from the avodah zara, with swords and with spears. Like the Gemara says in Makkos, she'ein chiyuv halav rak b'mizgoded al meis el avodah zara, that the only chiyuv is on, that the only chiyuv over here is that we're talking about by when he's doing it by avodah zara. Avalam is goded b'loy taina. A person does it for no reason or for no specific cause. Omitach kas, or because he's angry. Al beis shenofal, his house fell down. Or he lost his business. So then, even though it's something that's very disgusting, a mechur, and it's ugly, it's 100% aser, but there's no ikr chiyuv of the lav. It's interesting that he uses the words nimas and mechur, which would stem very well with Rashi, because Rashi says that atem ruyim li is noem v'lo gedudum kurochim. If a person has a big wound, nobody likes looking at big open wounds. And unfortunately, there is a concept that people aren't allowed to pain. They cut themselves, and when the blood rushes out, they feel some relief. But that's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. There's an isur legabe that. Mishor she'hamitzvah, the understanding of the mitzvah is kadesh lo nasa bin banu shum inyan ba'olam doim lo ovdei avodah zara. We shouldn't have anything in common with the ovdei avodah zara. Ki inyan shekasavti b'lav da'kavas harosh in mitzvah reshon aleph. And we were prevented from cutting ourselves on it. That it's not proper for the Am HaNivchar, those of us that are the Balei Chochmas HaTorah, which is Yokar, to be pained with something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. That's very interesting, because L'maisa, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does things that pain people. That's a fact. But we have to understand that it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to try to find relief in that as well. HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us to be mitzvah with certain things, but only the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us to be mitzvah, we're allowed to be mitzvah. All the stories of the Gedolim that their child passed away on Shabbos or whatever it was, and on Shabbos they continued as if nothing happened, and all of a sudden, Matzah Shabbos, when they heard about the news, when it was too hard for them, they passed out or whatever it was. But that's the concept over here, because that means that they're being mitzvah only on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants them to be mitzvah. In the first time when the Torah mentions this in Mitzvah Samach Daled, Aval shenashchis gufeinu, to destroy our guf, when a kalkal atzmenu kishoitim, like fools, loy tov lanu. This is not a good thing. V'loy derech chachamim v'anshei bina. This is not the derech of the chachamim and the wise people. Rak ma'isa hamayin hanoshim apchusas v'chseri hadas. It's the foolish people and the empty-minded people. Shlei hevinu davar b'ma'isa hakelvin of la'isav. It's people that don't understand the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's not something that necessarily we could wrap our heads around it, but if this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing, and this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us, then obviously we have to follow that. As we mentioned before, but the concept is that a person's allowed to be mitzvah, and a person's allowed to cry, and there are times when a person should cry, but only with the measure that it's allowed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the Dinei HaTorah and the Dinei HaMitzvah. And I think there's a more general concept over here, understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being mitzvah us to be in command of our emotions, to be in control of our emotions. Not just to, you can't just get up and daven, in the middle of a party because the person doesn't have the Yishuv Hadas. And look at the Gemara over there, how a person has to have the right mindset when he's supposed to daven. Person Bechlal has to have a certain control over his emotions. Midine HaMitzvah, some of the halachas of the mitzvah are K'may She'amar Zechein Levrach and Makis, She'aseret Al HaMeis Chayv Al Kol Srita Malkus Achas. Every cut that he does, every scratch that he makes, he's Chayv another Malkus V'She Yisruba Kol Achas, only if he has a hasra on each and every one. V'aseret Srita Achas Al Chamisha Mesim Chayv Chamish Malkus, and a person who does one Srita on 5 mesim, he's chayiv 5 malkis. Yes, a preteb and seif tzech makis. The rest of the details are discussed in Sech Makis over there in Chav Aleph and Chav Beis. Because of Rambam Zechern Levracha. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Avodah Zarah Perek Yud Beis Halach Yudalid. Ki Ordor Shu Zechern Levracha Bechlal Asar Zushle Yehu Shnei Bati Dina Beirachas. Here is a totally different concept of Leitzes Titgodedו, which will answer towards the end with the Vart from Avnei Nezer, but the Rambam writes that the Chachamim also understand over here that there shouldn't be 2 bezdins, 2 batei dinim in one city. Zen noeg b'minig echad, v'zen noeg b'minig acher. One does one minig, and one has a different minig. Shadavar ze garm l'machleikis. This causes machleikis. V'lashon leitzes titgodedו kulemar leitasu agudos agudos. Leitzes titgodedו means don't make groups and bunches. An aguda is a bunch. And it shouldn't be that there's separate hanhogas and separate people. Everybody should try to do as much as they can of the same thing. From my Rebbe I learned so what does this mean? The lesasu agudis. You have Beis Shammai, you have Beis Hillel, you have Rabbi Yechon, you have Reish Lakish. You always have people that are arguing with each other. Why can't you have 2 batei dinim? So what does this mean? So he brings from his Rabbi she'ein isur zeh ela b'chabura achas. Only if it's within one chabura where people are arguing on each other. Ve'hin shavim b'chachma she'asur la'asos kol kat mehen kedvarov. She'zeh gar machlekes beinein. El yisuv yitnu b'davar harbe ad she'yaskimu kulum l'dei achas. Beis Shammai knew that people were being noig like Beis Hillel, but we know the Gemara says that they would marry into each other. Or if not, everyone's going to end up doing like the machmirim. If it's something that's machlekes min haTorah, if you have 2 equally qualified business in the same town, then there's no issue of leitzes titgodedו. That there were different opinions, but they were somehow still able to get along. This iser is noig at all places, at all times, with all people. Someone who's over on this, and a person did scratch himself in one of the places on his body. He's chayiv malchus, as we spoke. Okay, so we're going to get back to this concept of agudis to explain it a little better, and how does that stem with the other drasha with Avnei Nezer. Just want to go through the Sfonu now. The Sfonu says she'ein roi laharis tachlis hadayga v'atzar al karav hameis. We shouldn't show the tachlis hadayga. We have to hold back just a little bit. The concept really always is that because we are banu l'Hashem lekechem, we believe in tchias hamesim. And we believe that when a person is nifter and he leaves this world, it's almost like a hatmana. We put him away, and he's going to come back later. Not that there shouldn't be any avelos at all, but we should. If we believe that there's such a thing as A of harachamon, B tchias hamesim, then we won't have to be misabel too much. So he says, we shouldn't be too concerned with the nezek that's going to happen to the mace after he dies. Whether that means in this world that the body rots, or means in the next world what's going to happen to the neshama. Whatever it is, we could assume, unless we know definitely otherwise, that the person's not going to get Olam Haba. We can imagine that this person is going to get Olam Haba. That Avada, the experience of Olam Haba is much greater than any experience that can be in this world. But really, there's a concept here that once in a we don't control the world like Hakadosh Baruch Hu does. So whatever it is that's happening, we just have to take the back seat and let Hakadosh Baruch Hu be the driver. The idea is that if we're going to be so concerned about what's going to happen after every person passes away, I hope he gets hope he doesn't get too much Gehenna for what he did, or I hope he goes straight into Gan Eden. I mean, we could always. It's interesting because on the other hand, we do mitzvahs to elevate the neshama of a nifter. whether it's brachas or kaddish or kedusha or davening or mishnayos, tzedakah, and these are things that are all brought in the Chazal to do for a mace. But to be concerned that I hope he really makes it. I hope he gets a very comfortable spot over there. So but Pashtus, it's not something that we don't need to worry about what's going to happen to him. We have bitachon that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of him. And it's interesting because we mentioned not too long ago that yesh kaina olamai b'sha'achas, that whatever a person's world looks like in this world, that's what his world is going to look like in the next world as well, because he doesn't, he doesn't have, what are his hasagas aren't going to get that much bigger over there. The Kliyakar goes a little more interesting. I want to go through that as well. Lefisha umas mitzdarim kedin al davar ovad asher hoylech v'layoshuv. The goyim they're mitzdarim on something that gets lost and is never going to return. Avalat loyking, but us that's not true. Ki b'chol b'achar Hashem liyosei la'am segula, that we are an am segula, and that's what the pasuk says. Ki b'chol b'achar Hashem liyosei la'am segula mikol ha'amim is a continuation of le'sasimu karcha b'neinechem l'meis. Because the pshat is like this. A segula is a treasure. A treasure means that the king puts it away in a specified area. HaKadosh Baruch Hu collects all the neshamas of the tzaddikim, and nothing gets lost. Why would a person be mitzvah on something that's a real mitzvah and he's shining over there? He says his sun's set in this world, but it's shining in the next world, and he's benefiting from all the mitzvahs and masim tayv that he did in this world. Rabbi Seinu Amru, the Gemara says in Shabbos, Daf Kofei Amud Beis, Hamorid Demoris Al Adam Kasher HaKadosh Baruch Hu Seifran Humanichan V'Beis Gnozov. A person who cries, who sheds tears on an Adam Kasher, on a tzaddik, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts them and puts them in his Beis Gnozov, puts them in his treasure house. Shenemar Nudi Sefarta Ata Sima Demosi Benoidcha Alei B'Sefer Secha. The pasuk says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts them and he puts the demois in the noid, in the bag, in the pouch, Haloi B'Sefer Secha. V'hatam, and he explains the fisha gaman afashas hem segula v'itzer. The nefashos all go into the Oitzer. Well, can you gamma the Beis Gnozov? The demois also go into the Beis Gnozov. So the relationship that we have with this person that we now lost, so then we cry about him. So that person goes into the Oitzer Hamelech of the Segula, of the where HaKadosh Baruch Hu collects puts all the neshamas. So to HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes the demois that we shed on such a person and puts that in the Beis Gnozov. What's the understanding of haloi b'sefer secha? So this is what it means. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts them and knows an exact amount of all the tears that everybody cried. There's a certain amount of tears that a person cries. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes all these tears and puts them in the Beis Gnozov, and there's certain chashivas to it. Okay, nosan tamal sviras noid v'simus had the most benoid. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu collects it, because the davar choshev ad moed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'omar haloi b'sefer secha, ratzol loymar haloi gam hema ba'atzma hem b'sefer secha shatam meitin ma'achnis b'mispar. There's a certain number, there's certain chashivas to the number of the tears. So kumayim you gam ad moed gnuzim in mispar. Just like there's a cheshbon of exactly the neshamas and exactly, like we know Yeshish should be the Torah, the 600,000 neshamas. There are demois that on all the ishim ksherim that everybody is moirid on, all the people that are moirid the demois on these anashim ksherim. So then so that's and he explains the pasuk like that. Being that now we're not a korcha from either side anymore, meaning from our side in this world and in the next world. So then it's not right, it's not proper that a person should make a bald spot lemes. Because a person who's so much bitzar that he's like, what's my crying worth anyways? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is collecting the demois. So a person who understands that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is collecting the demois and he's not going to make a karcha by the muck and with the demois come out. And then he goes on to explain another pshat, that Mistama HaMitzar al Heder Kishra Namaisa Rei Relikim. It says, Yiras Hashem hi oitzaroi, oitzer shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ki ein oitzen oitzer ki medavar she'ein benimtza. What's the oitzer? Oitzer shal Yiras Shamayim. Yiras Shamayim is it's a rare breed, it's a rare type of thing. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to put in his oitzer. So al ken HaKadosh Baruch Hu meniach kam ad mais bebeis genazov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also puts the mois into the storage house, into the treasure house. Masha Omer la Am Segula koyal bein einechem Amar al mokum ad mois. The Am Segula is going also on what's bein einechem. That's the mokum ad mois. V'hainu shemin adinim min aroi min avada person should cry, and avada person has to be married to mois. But ultimately, the person is going to come back. We're all going to come back about Tchias HaMesim. But the concept is that a person shouldn't say, well, what's the point of my crying anyways? What does it got to do? It's all done. There's no hope and there's no anything. Like we spoke by Beitar, that was gufa that was gufa the chizik. That was gufa the fact that they got buried. What do you mean that they got buried? The burial, that's the end of it. But fakert, that's what we say, that you put him in the ground. It's like you're planting him. It's like Israel. It's nachamal. We could say that that's a pshat in the pasuk, that those that plant with demois. What do you mean you plant with demois? But the pshat is that that's the oitzer of demois that people are moirid al adam kosher. And the Svarim will bring that it says leisasimu korcho ben einechem lo meis. It doesn't say lo meis. It says lo meis. So we know by Zachrenu l'chaim, the Torah says that we should be marked, but it says Zachrenu l'chaim, not Zachrenu lachayim. Because lachayim means loy chayim, but over here we're saying leisasimu korcho ben einechem lo meis, because loy meis, he didn't die, he's still alive, and there's still Tchias HaMesim over here. Fine. And just the last thing I want to mention is the Avnei Nezer, that the Avnei Nezer goes through the Gemara that says titgodeddo leisas agudas, and he asks l'chayra, what's the inyan of agudas l'chayra? The Gemara is talking. The pasuk says beferish they're talking about a mace. So he answers that the pshat is because bonam atem l'Hashem alekechem, and that misa is not muchlat. Misa is not forever. It's not something that's definite. It's for a long time, but there's ultimately going to be Tchias HaMesim, and that a person's neshama, if the ikar is the neshama and not the guf, then the neshama avada lives on. So he says that's why we shouldn't show so much tsar. But this is dafka if we understand the concept that the neshama is higher than the guf. But the guf goes in the ground and it gets rotten and it's over. So legabe guf, it's taka lost, and the guf not necessarily here anymore. But it's still also to show so much tsar, because the ikar is the neshama and the guf is only a levush on the nefesh. And when the psukim and chazal refer to a person's body, it says basar ha'odam, and we don't refer to that as the odam, because the odam is the tziruf of the guf and the neshama. So the mitzvah is that we should be nimshach achar on neshama, not achar the guf. So if the neshama is still here, so what are we being mitzvah? If the neshama still exists, so what are we being mitzvah? Kol kach ala tofel, ala lavush, ba'isha ikor and lazala. The ikar is still here. So then he goes on to say like this, that the pshat is that that's for each and every yochid. But Klal Yisrael as a whole is one guf. And the chiluk, the reason why that there are chilukim and machlekes and pirudim between one another is mitzad the gufim, is mitzad the gashmias, and mitzad all our ideas that we concocted and created that's going to go against, that's not going to allow us to get along one with the other. All the agudas and all the machlekes comes about, all the different groups and all the different cliques and all the different parties all come from the fact that, all the people that can't get along with each other is all the fact because that they're stuck mitzad aguf. A person who's understanding of seichel and understanding of neshama, he's able to really love another yid like himself, and to get rid of all the machlekes, to get rid of all the machlekes and to overlook all the differences and all the things that are going to get in the way. Because machlekes causes mace, and it causes misa, it causes pirud, and that's the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world is machlekes. I heard from Adam Chashuv, Adam Gadol, he said that people say that today's issue is because of shaitels, because of talking during davening, and it's because of this, and it's because of that, and machlekes. all boils down to machlekes. Nothing good ever comes out of machlekes. Even machlekes Hashem Shemayim, people could get hurt. My bracha is to everybody that we should be zeicha to a matzav where there's not going to be any more machlekes in Klal Yisrael anymore. Genig machlekes by Klal Yisrael, and we should be zeicha to have a wonderful Shabbos, and that's all.